Live game at the City Ground tonight on Sky Sports. Stoke City owns Nottingham Forest, and I've got a couple of bets lined up for this one. And basically I'm going to focus mostly on the XG and the nuances of the XG, first half, second half mainly, because both of these two teams are, we're projecting very low first half total. Stoke in general are an unders team, there's no two ways about that. There's a very deliberate process in place under Nathan Jones, and they are in a very tricky period at the moment where they've had a really poor start to the season. The process has been okay, but they're just making lots of individual errors. It's costing them dear, and that leads to a sense of uncertainty avoidance. Everybody's been a little bit overcautious and a little bit extra deliberate about carrying out the instructions and the way that it's supposed to play and sticking to the plan. But there's not a fluidity or a freedom to the way that they're playing. Anyway, total XG in the first half is 0.83 goals per game for both teams in the first half. And for Forest, the total XG is very similar, 0.85. So this can be a real slow burner, I think, if those two teams continue to follow that pattern of not feeling the way into the game and not going gung-ho and taking too many risks at the beginning of the game. I expect Stoke to make most of the running early on. I think they have they do look to get after teams, but because of results and the way that games have developed, the longer that they don't take advantage of their superiority in a game, the more fragile and vulnerable they become, the more they potentially start to overthink things, and mistakes tend to be creeping in later on in games. So there's a 0-0 bet at half time, 13-8. I think that's more than fair. I think this is a very high chance of this being an unders game. The market has moved towards unders in the build-up overnight, and I can't go against that, but I just think that there's more value in the first half being particularly tight and cagey. Now Forest, they've been performing very well away from home so far this season, and they've also been performing very well in second halves relative to the first half. They went to Leeds. They were fortunate to get a point at Leeds in their first away game of the season. Bit of controversy surrounding the equaliser that they scored, but nonetheless 1-1 at Ellen Road's a good result. They've been to Fulham as well, which is arguably the second toughest fixture on the calendar, or the second strongest team, who are particularly good at the way they want to play at home. Forest were deserved winners at Fulham at Craven Cottage. That came on the back of when Fulham were at the very best against Millwall, a 4-0 win. A few days later, Forest turned up there, were given no chance at all, and were worthy winners. Scored an early goal that gave them a platform, but prevented Fulham from really having any of the game their own way and creating too many chances for the remainder of the game. Ended up winning 2-1. Then they went to Charlton, and this is a side of Forest that I quite like of what I've seen so far. Is there's two performances where they've really not turned up at the beginning of the game. Charlton away, Preston at home, 1-0 down in both games, poor first halves in both games, but have kind of dug in and found an equaliser later on in the second half. And they do seem to be, under Sabri Lamucci, his personality type, I think, is ISFP. I've got him down as I think he's more of an adaptable type manager, adapts to the circumstances as he goes rather than works to a plan from the outset, and that appears to be showing itself in Forest's performances so far, is that they are adapting well within games and improving as games go on. So what this is leading me towards is a bet, a more speculative bet, but on the draw half time, Nottingham Forest full time, you can get 13-2 on that bet. And I just think if this game does prove to be a slow burner, as the underlying XG data would suggest, I do believe that it could, that will play into Forest's hands. I think Forest will warm to the task as the game goes on, the longer it stays 0-0, and I think Stoke will become more nervous in front of the cameras, in front of their own fans, based on the results that they've had so far this season. Things not going their way. I think that it becomes potentially becomes Forest's game to win later on if it's still 0-0, if it's been tight and cagey. And you know, I'm just kind of playing into the whole you know, the background coming into this game because of the relative position that the two teams are in. So 0-0 at half time is 13-8. I think that's a pretty solid bet, but for something a bit more speculative, you can get 13-2 on draw half time, Nottingham Forest full time.